Brouwerij Verhaeghe, Vichtenaar.
Life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. Well, it looks like it might be another Belgian beer. And I don't know how this has happened, but I've just ended up with loads of Belgian beer. And this is from the Brouwerij Verhaeghe. And this is their Vichtenaar, which is a Flemish ale, or Flemish Red Ale to give it its correct term. Now, Flemish Red Ale, in case you're not aware, is a very nice ale. I like it. Now, I know that that's probably not going to be for everyone because it is a sour ale, and it's getting its sourness from the lactobacillus that's in there, and also the spontaneous fermentation. It's also blended as well, so, sometimes, not all the time. It's a blend of ales, a bit like a creek beer, if you like, and it's blended with varying ages of beer or varying degrees of the fermentation that go on. So, for example, you may blend a 3-year-old beer with quite a fresh beer, or in varying degrees of age, etc. And probably the most famous is the Rodenbach Brewery, which are from a place called Roeselare, which is in West Flanders, as you would expect, where Flanders Red Ale comes from. Now, as I say, it's not a popular style outside of Belgium. Now, that may sound like a bit of a harsh statement, but it isn't. Certainly not in this country. I wouldn't say it's an acquired taste, but if you're not a fan of sour beer, you're not going to like it. And I do like sour beer myself, but I understand that certain people don't like it, which is fair enough. I have tasted the Rodenbach Grand Cru, which for me was an amazing beer. It's probably the best Flemish Red Ale that I've tasted. There are others out there, of course. This stuff is quite well known. The Duchess de Bourgogne is another one, which is pretty well known. I think I may have reviewed that. I can't remember. But it's very nice. If you've never tasted it before, if you can imagine a Belgian Brune but with sourness, you're sort of halfway there. But there's a lot more to it than that. There's varying degrees of the flavours that come from it are fruity, varying degrees of sourness, etc. All depends on how they blended it, or if they blended it at all. Sometimes they don't even blend it. But the IBUs on it are normally between 15 and 25, so it's not a bitter sourness, if you like. There is a sweetness to it, but it's sour. And the ABV is normally between 5% and I think it's 6.1 or 2, something like that, but certainly no more than 6.5, which is reasonably easy drinking. This one is from the Verhaeghe Brewery. They're based in a place called Anzegem, which is right in the west of Belgium, quite near the French border. West Flanders, obviously. It's near, I'm not sure how well up you are on your Belgian geography, but it's quite near a place called Kortrijk, which is like a small town type settlement in West Flanders. But that's where this is from. Now, these Flemish Red Ales get their colour from the red malt that's used in there, and they're blended, as I say, but they're also what some people would say are the most similar type of beer to wine, if you like. Now, I don't know how accurate that is. I hate wine, but I love this stuff, so work that one out. But this is from the Verhaeghe Brewery, and they've been going since I think 1876. I think it's 1876, and they produce some half decent beers. This hopefully, is one of them. So let's see what's going on with this one. Okay, it's 250 millilitres in the bottle. It is, as I say, a Flemish Red Ale, as if you didn't know. It's 5.1%, and I think everything else is in Flemish. Yeah, they really don't cater for the English market, do they? I don't suppose they get, well, so they don't get much business over in England or the United Kingdom. They certainly won't be after Brexit, which is a shame, but nevertheless we shall soldier on. Let's get this opened up. Right, is this going to fizz up on me? I do hope not. I'm going to have to open it up down here just in case it does. Nice. No fizz. There is the Verhaeghe Brewery coat of arms, if you like, and the name of the beer. Black and red cap. Into the collection it goes. Right, let's get it into ye olde glass. Right, now they call it a red ale, a Flemish red ale. Now, you work this one out. I wouldn't say that's red. I'd say that's more, well, is it? I suppose it is. You're probably seeing it more red in that camera than I am in real life, but that is a very distinct mahogany, dark chestnut type brown. I wouldn't say, would it be ruby? No, I wouldn't class that as ruby. What are we getting on the nose? Yeah. Now, when they said about the wine, I sort of rubbished that, but when I sniff this, it reminds me now, my parents were both Paddies, as does with most Irish kids. Certainly the boys, or obviously the boys only, they get enrolled into the church and they become altar boys. And believe it or not, I was an altar boy. Now that could explain a lot of things, but I was so ugly, even the priests wouldn't go near me, so I've never got touched up by a priest, but that's beside the point. We used to have to fill out the wine for the mass, and I do recall the smell of the altar wine, and apparently, by all accounts, it was a terrible wine. And you could probably imagine, because it had been left in a bottle, it'd be opened and closed for every mass, and by the end of it, it was almost like vinegar. It smelt disgusting. But, sorry, I should rephrase that, it smelt disgusting to a kid. But when I sniff this, I am putting mind slightly of the altar wine from that long ago. Christ, that would have been in the 1970s, that would have been. That's how fucking old I am. But you do get that. So yeah, you get a sourness from off wine, and that's what I'm getting here. And it's quite acidic, and yeah, it's just putting me in mind of a very poor wine. Now, don't get me wrong, I know fuck all about wine. All wine is poor, in my opinion, because I cannot stand the stuff.
And tip 4, men don't order wine, alright?
But this does, yeah, it puts me in mind of a wine, a red wine. That sourness. And really, that's all I'm getting. There's not much else. The lactobacillus on this is quite strong. Maybe there's some apple on that. But you don't get any hop bitterness, hop character in these at all. There is virtually none. It's like a lambic, that type of sourness. Anyway, let's get it down the hatch. Bottoms up. Lovely. Oh yeah. At only 5%, you can feel that alcohol warming. And on the finish, I mean, it's just total sourness on the palate. There is a carbonation on there that does sort of tingle in the mouth, but that's just dominated by sourness. Green apple sourness. Now when I say green apple, that immediately would sound like in a beer especially, that would be an off flavour. But it's not in this type of beer, because you know that sourness comes from the lactobacillus, which is desirable in this style of Flemish Red Ale. And it's one of them beers that, as I say, and I'm going to keep mentioning it, it is an acquired taste. If you have any misgivings about sour beer, do not try this. You will not like it. I love sour beer, so I like it. Yeah, so you get the initial sourness. The dominant flavour is like a green apple sourness. There are some other fruits on there as well, but they're very subtle. You really have to dig deep on the senses to sort of get what they are. Yeah, and it's light fruit, like, as I say, green apple is the most dominant, but there's a very, very slight hint of caramel on there. A little touch of alcohol on the finish too. Not much though. At 5%, you're really not going to get that. But the carbonation is quite big on that. But look at that. That head retention is great. You give that a little swirl. You can see that it just slips down into the glass. Very, very fine bubbles on there. And it is. I mean, this is weird. You know my views on wine. I hate wine, but I love this. And if you like red wine, you're probably, I don't know whether I should be saying this or not, but if you're a fan of wine, you may like this, you may not. Because if you're a big wine connoisseur, if you took one mouthful out of that, you'd say, oh, this is disgusting. It's sour. Because sourness isn't really a desirable flavour. Like beer, it can be an off flavour. In wine, it's not very, it's not desirable either. But it just works with this. And I can see why they say it's the most similar to wine. There is grape on there as well. Again, I have to say that I am getting sort of dark grape, black grape, if you like. That sweetness is there. It's subtle though. That's a really good Flemish Red Ale. So what's the verdict on Vichtenaar Flemish Ale? Yeah, that's a nice one. That is a good representation of a Flemish Red Ale. The sourness is definitely there. And as I say, I'm going to mention it one more time. If you don't like sour beers, if you don't like sour beers, give this a swerve, because this is just all about the sourness. I love sour beers, so this is really good for me. One thing I will say, this I don't think is as good as the Grand Cru from Rodenbach. And they do have a reserve as well, which is even better. I need to get hold of some of that. Don't get me wrong, this is a good representation of the style. It's not doing anything wrong for a Flemish Red Ale. But I just don't think it's got the flavour of the Rodenbach stuff. And the Rodenbach, that's what they specialise in, Flemish Red Ale. And they do it really well. And I think they've been taken over now by another brewery. Is it the Van Steenberg? I could be wrong. I think it's Van Steenberg that own them now. But they still do what they do, and they do it really well. But this isn't a bad representation. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. And I'll recommend it, but, if you don't like sour beers, don't buy this, because you will be disappointed, because it is very sour. I'm saying it's sour. and I love sour beers. So if you don't like sour beers, this is just going to taste absolutely disgusting. But I like it. That's getting 8 out of 10, and that is recommended. And remember, beer is working class champagne.